Good morning, everyone. Jim Clark here at the Synchronicity Sanctuary to share a contemplative focus with you today. And that focus I wanted to share with you today is simply life is a process. It's always in motion. Is it open or closed? And what does that really mean? So, consciousness is conscious energy. It's the essence of all and everything. It's like the sun that's always shining. While we are obsessed as a collective consciousness, as a collective unit, with the outer energy sources and usages to sustain our physical existence, we have little understanding as a collective of our inner energy and how it also contributes to our existence. So, while we are immersed in the illusion of separation and the world outside of us, coming from a perspective of uh, negative, fear based experience in the world, trying to survive in a world that we don't think we belong in, or that we don't have a connection to, or we have a tenuous connection to. On the one hand, this is the majority of the experiences that human beings have on this planet today and have had for a long, long time. And this is simply because they don't understand, they don't observe what's in front of them. They don't really have a perspective based upon their own careful and deep observation of it. What they do, what we do by habit now, because we have given the mind a position in our own culture here, especially in the West, where it's the supreme pinnacle of our ability to survive on this planet and to survive comfortably, which we've accomplished in many ways, and yet everything seems to be falling apart. And why would that be so? Could it be that once we draw a conclusion, once we try to define something that's essentially indefinable, we close the door to understanding and observation of what's really there? Because we've drawn a conclusion, we have a definition, we have a belief system. And as long as we are attached to that, we don't see what's in front of us as it really is, because we are going into our minds to tell us what that is instead of seeing very clearly what's in front of us. And this is the way of, especially in the West, this is the way that people have been for a long, long time. They draw conclusions, they have belief systems about where all this comes from, about the source of our existence, and what it's here, why we're here, what's our purpose in being here, as if we had one. Do we really have one? Who cares? You're here. And if you're here, why wouldn't that be all you need to know or to accept the fact that you're here without having to reach into some belief system to make that okay, to justify it, to make it good, to make something that the people around you in your world would have to subscribe to in order for everybody to be on the same page, so to speak. This has been the big difficulty of human beings trying to live together forever. You have religious systems, you have belief systems based on science now, you have all kinds of things going on, and dissension and disagreement, largely based on ignorance. Some of it's based on simply lack of information or evidence, and because of this, the propensity for the mind to create divisions and oppositions and differences between us is full on, because we're trying to find something to unite us within something that is illusory and limited. And it's different for every human being on the planet. We all have our own particular perspective of who we are and what life is and what is in front of us at any given moment. And the biggest obstacle to our understanding or acceptance of the being in the world is the fact that we try to define it. And every individual has their own way of defining and seeing the world. So how is that going to be a unifying apparatus? It can't, because it's always going to vary a lot from one person to the next, unless you all subscribe to a similar belief system about what is and what is not. So the divisive nature of drawing conclusions and definitions and trying to describe reality as if it could be really described rather than simply observing it within yourself and outside yourself as well, and being totally focused on your apprehension of what is out there, but also going inside and developing your internal subjective focus so that you can understand and experience how that is affecting what you're seeing out there. Is there really any difference? Or is it just a partnership where what you see is determined by what beliefs you're holding on to inside yourself? What experiences in your life have shaped how you see the world and how you respond to the world that you're not even conscious of? If you don't meditate and you don't have a holistic lifestyle to go deeply into yourself, to understand and discover yourself, because you have a definition. My name is Jim. I have this job. I live here. I do that. I have this relationship or that relationship, and on and on and on. All these little definitions close the door to true understanding or discovery of who we are and what our life is, because we've drawn a conclusion, consciously or unconsciously, about all these things. And so we go through life repeating pretty much the same thing all the time. When we try to interact with other people and introduce ourselves, it's all the stuff that we have attached ourselves to, and we are dependent on other people that we interact with to accept what that is. But their world is totally different, and they have unconscious stuff going on, and they have defined themselves in the same way. So naturally, we have collision courses all the time between human beings where this belief system does not mesh well with that belief system. Both belief systems being utterly ridiculous in the first place, and yet we are so attached and serious about this because we think we're talking about ourselves. We think we're talking about something or believing in something that's real, and that belief is of the utmost importance to our life, whereas in truth it's not. In fact, it's probably more of a danger to our life than it is contributing anything worthwhile. And all the time, what we're looking for, what we're here for, and what people are always looking for is bliss, it's happiness, it's fulfillment, it's the joy of life itself. And yet, by defining life, they cut themselves off from the joy of life because they're trying to manage an illusion that is very much an individual creation by virtue of the differences in our lives. And every life is very different. Our parents are different, our nationality is different, and we have such variation everywhere in the world, which is part of the richness of life. But rather than enjoying that richness of life without defining it, we define it, and then we run into differences, and we look at the differences as if that's something concrete out in the world, when in truth it's something that we have created unconsciously within ourselves by virtue of trying to intellectualize the truth, which can never be intellectualized really. Well, I suppose in some ways it might be able to, we can point to it, but it's so much more than the intellectual world. And it cannot really truthfully be defined. It's too dynamic, too much, it's too alive, it's too big, it's too much to be restricted by definition or by intellectualizations or by science. I mean, science has contributed a lot to our understanding that indeed everything is coming from nothing. Today, with quantum science, experiments that have demonstrated this uh, successfully in many parts of the world, at least some parts of the world understand this, although they're still trying to interpret that in terms of what that means as a human being. Unless they meditate, they might already have reached that answer, and now they realize that quantum science has only established a validation and verification of what meditators have discovered for centuries, that everything comes from nothing. What we call nothingness is everything. It's consciousness. It's the conscious energy, aware, and it's life. That is the life that we have. As the sun gives life to human existence on this planet and to all the animals and the plants and so forth, consciousness is the life process that we are experiencing right now, because we are that consciousness. And all our definitions have done is separate ourselves from ourselves. And we're trying to live an illusory life of the ego, which is just a instrument for us to use while we're here on this planet. There's nothing wrong with the ego. It's just that we are using it wrongly. We're using it unconsciously. We're being used by it, you might say, in the sense that we're trying to live up to a definition of who we are at any point in your life. That's only a little fraction of what's really true in your life experience. And it doesn't mean that your name is, you should not have a name, you shouldn't have any kind of a notion of your past, but trying to make it what it is not is hanging everything up for you, because you're trying to carry something that was true for a moment into your life and to define your life, when your life is so much more than that. And this is what people are struggling with. They want to be fulfilled. They want the blissful nature of themselves to be happening in every moment, and yet it can't do that because it keeps shutting it out with the definitions that they're so attached to. And this is what all meditators have faced in their journeys, is the challenge of letting go of all these attachments that we have. Attachments to say, I am this person, I am that job, I am this relationship, and so forth and so on. And when these are happenings that we have encountered, they're part of our overall experience. They're not who we are. You cannot define who we are, because consciousness is everything. So how do you define everything when it is individualized billions of times over, many billions of times over, just as a human expression? And every human expression is the same consciousness as the other human expression, even though on the outside it looks very different and individualized. On the inside, it's the same source consciousness that is all and everything. And when you're not in touch with your own internal self, your inside, your subjective reality of who you truly are, this is not apparent. Everything says you're alone in the world, you're separate from everybody else in the world, and you have to survive in this world somehow. You have to belong to it. And in order to belong to it, you have to subscribe to some belief system, some definition, so forth and so on. But if you just look without definition, if you just look like some of the ancient meditator stories in the Zen tradition and so forth, where people would look at a wall and just stare at a wall until the wall disappeared. And when they reached that point in their observation, then they began to see reality for what it really was. By eliminating the illusory projection coming from within of the mind, they started to see what was really there and experienced what was really there, and that what was there was them as consciousness, as the loving, all-inclusive energy that is all and everything in existence. So breaking through the illusion is not an easy thing to do, but it's the only worthwhile thing that we might be able to accomplish if we give ourselves to that process. So life is a process always in motion. Is it open or closed? If it's closed, which is most people have a closed life process because it's limited to the definitions and limited observations from an egocentric perspective, but it can be open, it can be all-inclusive, and it can be blissful and loving under all circumstances. So that's the potential, and this is what we're here for, is to rediscover who we truly are, starting from our illusory existence and breaking free from that by our choice. So that's what I wanted to share with you today, and I'll be back again next week to share another contemplative focus with you, and I hope to see you again here. Thank you for watching.